Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar today. It is 4 o'clock, so we will go ahead and begin. So today's webinar is about the School Executive Standard 1, and this is a flipped learning experience. And we will speak to that a little bit more in just a moment. My name is Mandy Taylor, and I want to just go over a few little housekeeping items with you today as we get started. You see on the screen a picture of the doc that is in GoToWebinar, and there are several features that are highlighted that we just want to make sure you are aware of. The first one is the hand icon, and if you would please just click on that hand icon so that we know that you can hear me. Excellent, thank you so much. If you have any technical issues as we go through the webinar, please don't hesitate to use the hand to let us know and we will assist you. There is a questions bar, and as you have questions, if you would please put those in the questions bar. We do have a handout today, so the handouts registers that there is one handout there. It is the slides that we are using today, so please feel free to download those. We are also going to change your role in the webinar. So right now you're in the webinar as an attendee, which means that you can only see the questions bar. We are going to change your role to a panelist, which means that you will be able to see the chat bar as well. So when we get a little bit further into the webinar today, we want to encourage you to participate via the chat bar as well. So you may hear a little bit of noise as we move people over, but we will be muting you so that we won't have background noise. All right, so I think we're ready to look at the next slide as we continue to have panelists moved over. So again, my name is Mandy Taylor. On the line with me today, Dr. Kimberly Simmons, who is our NCEES coordinator, and also Heather Stewart, who is a professional development coordinator in the east part of the state, and our colleague, Delia Payne, who is helping to run the technical side of things and answer questions as well. So just a couple of norms about webinar participation. Just minimize outside distractions. And again, if you are having any technical difficulties, please just raise your hand and then use the questions bar. And today we can also say the chat bar to let us know any questions that you have. All right, so today what we're going to focus on in the webinar, just a quick review of accessing the NCEES system, review some of the standard, some of the information, the ideas about Executive Standard 1 from the self-learning. We'll have an opportunity to discuss questions and strategies for this executive standard through the Making Meaning protocol, and then we'll finish our time together by sharing information and resources. So we mentioned that this is a flipped learning experience. So the reason why is because there was some self-study prior to coming to the webinar today. So the whole process was first you registered for today's webinar, and then we asked you to complete a self-study by looking at an archived webinar about Executive Standard 1 and exploring some supporting resources that went with that webinar. And so now we're coming to this session today to have any questions answered and to share ideas with each other. All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Heather to review accessing NCEES.
All right, thanks, Mandy. And Mandy, we're still moving some folks over to panelists if you want to help. All right, we want to make sure that you can access the North Carolina Educator Evaluation System and all of the resources. So just as a reminder, this is just a review about claiming your IAM account and logging into the NCEES Cloud. You access the North Carolina Educator Evaluation System by logging into NCEES Cloud. When you log in, there'll be numerous icons. You are looking for the green circle with True North Logic. When you click on that icon, you will be directed to the landing page for the North Carolina Educator Evaluation System. This is the home page and the landing page. From those tabs, just a reminder that if you have any issues with navigating this system itself, there are help guides. There's a tab for the multiple help guides that are available there. We have quick guides, evaluation guides, the PDP guides, professional development guides. They're all there as a resource for you. All right, and at this time I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kim Simmons, who's going to talk to you a little bit about some resources for the principal evaluation process.
Thanks, Heather. So here we have a one-pager that you can find on the NCEES Wiki, which outlines the principal evaluation process. I just want to call your attention to the right corner where you have a key, and it identifies red as being a required document, green are optional forms, and black is the required process. Just as a reminder, the entire principal evaluation process is a required process, as noted by the North Carolina.
Go to another high school as an AP.
So just to take a brief look, let's at the principal evaluation process, let's identify the required documents that we have for the principal evaluation process. In step 2, we have the self-assessment to be completed by principals and assistant principals. That is a required document. And in step 7, we have the same self-assessment, again being a required document, and then the summary evaluation form rubric is also a required document for the process. Optional forms, you see in step 2, the North Carolina Principal and Assistant Principal Goal Form is an optional form. However, this form is highly recommended. This helps principals and assistant principals identify their goals for the upcoming year. So there's a lot of clarity between the principal and whoever, the superintendent and or designee, whoever is completing the evaluation for the principal, but also adds clarification between the assistant principal and the principal for the goals that the assistant principal may have for the year. Also in data collection, you see in green the principal and assistant principal evaluation process. Documentation is an optional form used to document site visits and conference dates. Again, an additional form, optional of course, but it does help to keep everybody on the same page with the documentation of the site visit by the superintendent or designee and the conference dates between the superintendent or designee and the principal, or between the principal and assistant principal. The mid-year evaluation process toward achieving goals form is also another optional form used by the evaluator to document progress. And then in step 6, you see the goal setting worksheet, another optional form to identify professional growth goals based on data gathered from artifacts and other sources. Just like we're really supporting and promoting the better use of the PDP for teachers, we also want to support and suggest the use of this document for principals and assistant principals to also identify their professional growth goals to ensure that they are met and that they receive the support that they need to meet those goals. So any questions on the principal evaluation process? Also, this document can be found on the NCEES Wiki again, and it's just a one-pager that's very concise and easy to read and understand. So here we have a conference resource for principals and assistant principals to be used by the superintendent or designee. What happened is we had created a resource for principals to use with teachers, and it was the resource was called Questions for Post-Observation Conferences and Summative Evaluations. So we also then received, after we delivered this resource, we received a request from superintendents across the state that they would like a similar form that they could use to help their discussions with principals and for principals to use to help with their discussion with assistant principals based around the North Carolina School Executive Standard. So that's what you have here is a link to this resource. It's also located on the NCEES Wiki, but we hope that you'll take time to take a look at this resource and utilize it however to best fit your needs in your LEA or charter. So here we have the North Carolina evaluation process. This is for teachers. Just a brief overview. I will not go into great detail other than to say that this is also on the NCEES Wiki for you to have for your convenience. Just it clearly outlines the comprehensive evaluation cycle, the standard evaluation cycle, and the abbreviated evaluation cycles for teachers.
Thank you, Kim. And we just thought that might be a handy resource for administrators to have as they are evaluating and observing teachers throughout the year. So,
and I also think there may be an updated version for that as well, but we'll make sure that the correct version is linked.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we want to turn our attention now to Executive Standard 1, and Dr. Simmons will be coming back in to the conversation in just a few moments. So I mentioned that we are going to use a protocol to structure our conversation today. And the name of that protocol is Making Meaning. It is a protocol produced by the National School Reform faculty, and it does have 6 specific steps to it. So we are going to explore this text, which in this case is just the first executive standard. And the first step in the protocol is just getting started. The second step is describing the text and then asking questions. The fourth step, we will speculate about the meaning or the significance of the text. And then we will look at implications for our work. And finally, we will take just a moment to reflect on using the protocol itself. So we are actually going to combine a couple of these steps just to adapt to our online environment. So step 1, getting started. Participants read the text, making brief notes about aspects. This was all accomplished through the pre-work, and we're going to take just a moment and review some key aspects of the pre-work. And Dr. Simmons, please feel free to jump in to this part of the discussion as well.
So is this, Mandy, where you would like for me to jump in with the Standard 1 strategic leadership?
Yes, please.
So let's take a look at this and just read what we have here as the definition for strategic leadership. Principals and assistant principals will create conditions that result in strategically re-imaging the school's vision, mission, and goals in the 21st century. Understanding that schools ideally prepare students for an unseen but altogether unpredictable future, the leader creates a climate of inquiry and challenges the school community to continually repurpose itself by building on its core values and beliefs and its preferred future, and then developing a pathway to reach it. This is standard 1, strategic leadership, is all-inclusive, and I really like this standard because even though it was developed and promoted in North Carolina in 2008, this is very insightful and very forward-thinking as we have worked to move our school communities to the 21st century. But you can see here that we have highlighted in yellow some actions, some verbs, some things that a leader would do in their school as it is related to strategic leadership. And here you see create conditions, re-imaging, creating a climate of inquiry and challenges the school community, and then developing a pathway. All of these things are so important for the leader of the school to do because only the leader of a school can do these things. There's a saying about it has to be important to the principal before it's important to anyone else, and that's really the case here with strategic leadership. Only the principal and assistant principal can create those conditions that strategically re-image the school's vision, mission, and goals in the 21st century. And understanding, I'm kind of looking at the definition again and talking through it, understanding that schools ideally prepare students for an unseen but altogether unpredictable future, the leader creates a climate of inquiry. And that's, I'd really like to call your attention there to creating a climate of inquiry. We want people to ask us questions. We want people to know the reason why things are, the climate of the school, the reasons why that we make decisions as school leaders like we do. And we want to be challenged so that we can continually repurpose ourselves by building on those core values and beliefs. Continuous change is good, and that's really what strategic leadership is. It's assessing what our conditions are now and then working to improve them, seeking feedback to always make things better and to improve the climate of our schools. And then, of course, developing a pathway to reach it. We just can't have these ideas and know that we're working towards our goals as a strategic leader. We have to develop very specific pathways that will deliver our teachers and our students and our school community to those goals. School executive practices. I'll just let our participants read through these 10 practices, if we can just give them a couple of minutes. I think you'll see as you read through these school executive practices that a lot of what I mentioned before is outlined here in 10 practices for you to use. A couple of things I'd like to point out would be number 2, where we systematically challenge the status quo by leading change, always looking for improvement and change. And then I'd also like to call our attention down to number 9, adheres to statutory requirements regarding the school improvement plan. Our school improvement plan is such a crucial part of not just being a strategic leader, but it really covers all of our school executive standards. Our school improvement plan is mentioned numerous times, almost in every standard. So we should use this tool as a way to house our goals for our school and a way to really monitor how we're moving forward and progressing and embracing the change. And then finally, number 10, facilitates the collaborative development of annual school improvement plans to realize strategic goals and objectives. Again, this works with utilizing that school improvement plan and creating strategic goals and objectives, just like we discussed in the definition, creating a pathway for improvement.
Thank you, Kim, for helping us capture those big ideas from the pre-work. And just as a quick reminder, these are the specific elements that are in Executive Standard 1. So I'll give you just a minute to browse back over those. And then we're ready to move on to step 2. So this is where we've kind of combined the 2 steps in the protocol, because step 2 was asking you to describe the text, wanting to know, what did you see? Were there any patterns in the way, obviously it's in columns and rows, but were there any patterns in the words or anything that you noticed while you were reviewing this standard? And then step 3 is questions. What questions does this text raise for you? So the bottom line is what is outlined in the text box. What did you learn and what questions do you have? And this is where we would love to hear from you, either in the questions bar or in the chat bar. Let us know, what did you see? Did you notice any patterns within the specific elements or among the elements? What questions did come to mind for you as you were engaging in the study of Executive Standard 1? And again, we just encourage you either in the chat bar or the questions bar to let us know what you were thinking or what questions you have. Excellent. All right. So a constant reference of the mission, the vision, and the core beliefs throughout this standard. All right. Oh, good. And if you'll keep an eye on the chat bar, we are getting some more comments in. Thank you. So checking for alignment between the beliefs and the school improvement plan when undergoing and reimagining. The role of the principal as the driver to make sure that the strategic plan is followed through. All right, and we also have a question, and those on the telephone call, please feel free to answer, but also panelists, please feel free to answer as well. In terms of distributed leadership, how do you fill positions of leadership? Do you appoint or do you vote by staff? So what are your thoughts? How do you fill those positions of leadership? By appointment or by the vote of the staff? If you're looking to enact distributed leadership in your building? All right, a couple of votes for vote by staff. Enhances buy-in. And then another comment about the strategic leadership is not only about vision, but can see the steps large and small to help the entire school move in the same direction. So here's another dimension to the leadership and voting question. What do you do if you have someone who isn't being voted in but really has a desire to serve as a leader? What are your options as the principal and as the lead learner in the building to support that teacher? Offer opportunities to staff and encourage participation amongst teacher leaders. And some of those opportunities to have that kind of conversation may present themselves in a post-observation conference or a pre-observation conference. Co-leadership roles is something to be considered too, based on strengths. A suggestion that there's a combination of teacher voice in the form of voting as well as administrator voice in terms of being able to appoint to develop a leadership team. Yes, PDP goals also can be centered around leadership. Are there any other questions or any other patterns that were noticed or any other words that jumped out at you as you were reading through the standard and the descriptors within the elements? So we're talking about leadership and the aspect of distributed leadership. So what about this process of the collaborative processes? So looking at element 1A with the sticking with the vision, mission, and strategic goals, one of the descriptors under accomplish says designs and implements collaborative processes to collect and analyze data about the school's progress for the periodic review and revision of the school's vision, mission, and strategic goals. So what is your interpretation of collaborative processes? And have you found or implemented any that you find work well and would be willing to share with the group? Any experience with successful collaborative processes, or how do you define collaborative processes? What are examples? Teachers working together as a team for an event or a project, okay? PLCs as a collaborative process. So Evergreen invites community stakeholders as well when they have a sit retreat to look at data and progress towards goals and set next steps.
I would like to comment on the school improvement team retreat. I think that's an excellent way for school improvement teams to be proactive in building those relationships and identifying their values before starting to really work on some of the very specific needs of the school and for the upcoming year. So kudos to this school improvement team for having this type of insight.
Okay, so then also the process of each of the quote-unquote big rocks of the school improvement plan being divided out among different groups of educators in the building, and then having a lead, a person that team takes the lead on those goals and reports back to the school. So then you have an opportunity for lots of voices to tackle meaningful work. Yep, and then making sure that multiple groups' voices are heard, right? The parents, the students, the support staff as well. So any other questions or any other words, any other thoughts about any of the elements? About leading change? We've kind of looked at the school improvement plan, but any other questions there? I'll go ahead and put in a shameless plug. Teacher working conditions will be coming out in the spring, and it's mentioned there in 1C, so be on the lookout for that. And then specifically looking at distributed leadership. Yes, so bringing out the point that collaboration can also be a great way to boost morale, because at least everyone has had an opportunity to have input into the process or the decision or the conversation, even if it turns out that what they were specifically advocating for isn't what happens. but they were involved in the process and had a voice. All right, well, if we are, it seems like we're okay. We're at a good spot to move on. So we'll look at step 4. What is significant about this text? What are the ahas? When you stop and look at this from a 30,000 foot view, what kind of meaning or insights do you draw from this standard and from the elements? What's the big point? To seek continuous improvement in a meaningful, intentional way. So bringing intentionality to the work, and that it's about being in a continuous improvement cycle. What are some other takeaways? To drive change for the benefit of students. And we're going to come back to that in our next step. So good, thank you. The process of improvement, it is a process and requires everyone to take ownership. And echoing that, change doesn't happen in isolation. So for the change to be meaningful, the leader has to engage all stakeholders. And the nice way to sum that up, it takes a village. All right, any last thoughts before we move on to the next? And that being an advocate for students and teachers, and that kind of reflects back to the teaching standard 1 and being a leader from the teaching standards. So nice connection there. All right. So let's look at our next step, step 5. So like we were just kind of, these are nice bridges, these last few comments. So to have proficient, to be marked as proficient in standard 1, and that's where we want teachers to be when we look at their standards. But if you're proficient at standard 1, how does that impact student growth? What are your thoughts about that? Being proficient in standard 1, how does that reflect and encourage student growth? So maybe with some of the elements, it's a little bit of an obvious question, right? If you look at element 1B, systematically considers new and better ways for leading for improved student achievement and engages stakeholders in the change process. Yes, so leading through the implementation and evaluation of effective instructional practices. And so yes, that will have an impact on student growth. And then being able to prepare students to graduate from high school. Clear goals and follow through cultivates growth. You can't know where you are going without a clear plan. And that standard 1 sets that stage for all of the other standards. So if we go back to the beginning of the conversation and the role of the principal as that driving force behind initiatives and behind change and being that leader, then yes, it's going to, all of these things kind of fall into place, don't they, in terms of being able to support student growth and support teachers to support student growth. Kim, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that particular question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, well then we will take a step, we'll take our last step with our protocol. And if you this is just an opportunity for us to get a little bit of feedback and for you to think through this process of using a protocol to structure the conversation around the standard. Was it a beneficial tool to have? Are there things that you would change if we were to use this protocol in a subsequent webinar? And just in general, whether it's in this webinar or in a conversation with a teacher or as a faculty meeting, are there any benefits to using a protocol to structure conversations? So just asking for just a little bit of feedback. All right, so yes, thank you. We're starting to get some feedback in, and continue to think through that. And as we look through these last pieces of the agenda for the webinar today, please don't hesitate to continue to give us some of that feedback, particularly if there are any suggestions that you have. All right, so I am going to turn it over to Heather to look at some resources that we have available.
All right, as with the flipped learning experience, where you do some self-learning ahead of time and then really think about the impact of your learning and embark on this discussion with the protocol and have the opportunity to ask questions about anything that you learned, we also want to point you in the direction of the professional development courses. At any time, you can continue your self-learning with the professional development courses. When you log into the North Carolina Educator Evaluation System, there is a tab at the top next to the help guides that says professional development. When you click on that tab, your landing page shows you what is happening in professional development and the containers for searching for courses. You'll see on the left side navigation, here's the professional development news that talks about any courses that are being offered by DPI that are instructor-led. And then on the right side, you have your containers for searching for courses. There's a basic course search. You can find the courses that you've already decided to register for and go to the learning opportunities as in notated by B. There's also containers for required training, recommended training, and so forth. When you go into the course search and type in some keywords, like the example here on the screen is discipline, you can click advanced search and you can search for a specific title or description or number. If you click show all, you will get courses, all the courses that have the identifier of discipline. And then if you would like to register for that course, if it's self-paced, you just click start. And so again, for registering for courses, you click on the blue hyperlink, it will open and you click start. When you go to the My Courses container, there is the My Transcript and the Learning Opportunity. My Transcript will show your CEUs that you can download and print and turn into HR. And for Learning Opportunities, those show all the courses that you have completed, as well as any surveys that might be attached. Courses are not complete unless the survey is completed as well. At this time, NCTPI is not offering any instructor-led courses this semester, but keep visiting the professional development landing page or the link listed on the slide there, rt3nc.org, for a list of upcoming instructor-led courses that might be offered next semester. There are some new self-paced courses available in the system. There's the North Carolina K-3 formative assessment process for teachers, instructional strategies to support K-3 oral language development. There's Digital Literacies 1, reading, writing, and research, and Digital Literacies 2, visual information literacy. A complete list can be found on the, by searching all courses in the professional development tab, or simply go to the rt3nc.org and all of the courses are listed there. There are 44 self-paced modules and 21 mini modules. There's a lot of information in there, and you can search by standard. All right. Mandy?
Thank you. So if you have any questions about today, please don't hesitate to let us know. We will have a link for you to provide us some more in-depth feedback. Just a couple of more resources are listed on the next slide. So we've talked quite a bit about the NCEES Wiki, and if you will visit the NCEES Wiki, if you haven't already, you will see first of all, you'll see the registrations for Principal Ready, and then underneath that, you'll see some pictures for manuals, and one of those is for the school executives. And when you click there, it will take you to a wiki page with lots of resources to support your work with school executives, including the manual itself. And then if you would like, there's a copy of the Making Meaning protocol that we use today.
Oh, thank you.
So we do have some upcoming webinars. We have a traditional webinar coming up on November the 7th. And by traditional, I mean actually it will be Heather and I, and we will be sharing with you the PD system a little more in-depth from what we did today about how to use that to support teachers, support staff, and even your professional learning as well. So we will be hosting that on the 7th. School counselors, there is a webinar specifically around their evaluation process, and that is on November 14th, as is another flipped webinar, so it will be the very similar format to today, but it is around the second professional teaching standard. And then we will follow that up the next Tuesday with another webinar around Executive Standard 2, which will also be a flipped learning experience. And then finally, in early December, we will be having a webinar to support the teacher and support staff middle of the year process with the online tool in NCEES. So please don't hesitate to join us for any of those and to share these opportunities with colleagues. And there again is the NCEES Wiki, a screenshot of what it looks like. And you can see on the left-hand navigation, upcoming webinars is linked there, as well as archived webinars, including ones that we have already conducted this year. You should be able to click on the 2017-18 webinars, and you will be taken to the webinar and the slide deck for that webinar as well. So after today's webinar, you will receive an email with details that include the title, the date, the description, and participation time. These emails have been bundled by some educators and then submitted to the district office for the district's determination as to whether or not to approve for renewal credit. But it is just documentation that you can save for that purpose. And there is the link to the feedback form. We will put it in the chat bar for you to be able to access quickly. But we do appreciate the time you take to provide that information. We do use it to fine-tune future webinars because we really do want to provide relevant information in an effective and efficient manner. And so we rely on your thoughts to help us do that. Thank you for your participation today. We really do appreciate all of your thoughts, your comments, your sharing with your colleagues. One last point, if you do run into technical difficulties, here is some information about who and how to contact in order to get some support in those areas. All right, and that is our last slide for today. We will put the feedback link in the chat bar. And again, just thank you for your time and for your participation today, and we hope you have a great afternoon.